So is the slide visible?
Yes, it is.
So good morning, everyone. I'm Arbaz Hafiz Khan. Today, my teammate Ms. Kavita Nair and I are forward to talking with you today about an article written by Aaron Mayer on how to negotiate across different cultures. In this article, please move on to the next slide. Yeah. In this article, the author talks about cross-cultural management and identifies 5 rules of thumb for negotiating with someone whose cultural style of communication differs from ours. Moving on to the next slide. So first of all, let us understand what culture is. Culture is a way of life of group of people. The behaviors, beliefs, values, and symbols that they accept generally without thinking about them, and that are passed along by communication and imitation from one generation to the next. It is a symbolic communication, and some of its symbols includes a group's skills, knowledge, attitudes, values, and motives. In other words, it is the collective programming of the mind and distinguishes the members of one group or category of people from another. So generally speaking, culture is a system of knowledge shared by a relatively large group of people. So next slide, please. Now the question that comes to our mind: does knowledge of different cultures really play a role in dealing or negotiating with people of different cultural backgrounds? Well, the answer to this is yes. Because, in simple words, culture is communication and communication is culture. Oh, now, why is it so? Well, because culture plays an important role in shaping the style of communication. Generally, people react to how we speak rather than what we say. Every culture around the world has a unique language. The culture in which individuals are socialized influences the way they communicate. Culture provides its members with an implicit knowledge about how to behave in different situations and how to interpret others' behaviors in such situations, thus giving an idea about what the other party is trying to convey and how we can approach them in order to keep things in our favor. Understanding how a culture communicates will not only allow people to convey a message to one another the way it was intended, but it will also help the individuals to find identity in the differences and the commonalities of the numerous cultures. And as we all know, for a deal or negotiation to be good and effective, clear communication is the most important and deciding factor, which, in other words, can also be called a good cultural knowledge. Next slide, please. Let me explain this with the help of an example that the author talked about in the article. So there was a deal going on between an Indonesian company and a Danish company. So after signing the deal, the Danish executives wanted to make sure that the Indonesians could meet the desired deadline. So they asked them directly if they were okay with the date, and at that time they replied yes. But what happened after a few days is that the Indonesians informed the Danish company through an email that it was not possible to complete the project by the deadline. After hearing this, the Danish executives lost their cool and were out of words. And what they said, the first thing that came into their mind was, we had already wasted weeks. Why did not they tell us transparently during the meeting? We felt that they lied to us point blank. Now, this was the first thing that came to their mind. They were feeling like they were cheated and the Indonesians were not really honest at them with them. But after they communicated with the Indonesian manager, things seemed pretty different to them. So the Indonesian manager told them that from an Indonesian's perspective, it is rude to look someone you respect and like in the eye and say no to a request. Instead, they try to show it with some unspoken signals, like their body language, their voice tone, or even signals like we will try our best. So using these using these unspoken signals, they try to show that we would like to do what you are telling us to do, but it may not be possible. Now, if the Danish executives had an idea about the way the Indonesians communicate or any idea about the culture of the Indonesians, they would have avoided this kind of problem. Next slide, please. Let us show you a video to explain more clearly what happens when an American, without any knowledge of a Japanese culture, tries to communicate with the Japanese for the first time. Now, this video is very interesting, so please watch it carefully. You are going to love this video. Sir, is the sound coming?
No, the audio is not there.
Kavita, switch on your mic, please. No, you don't have to close the presentation. Just reopen the presentation, and while playing the video, just switch on your mic.
May I help you?
Who'll be asking the questions, old man? Who are you?
You.
No, not me, you.
Yes, I'm you.
Just answer the damn questions. Who are you?
I have told you.
Are you deaf?
No, you is blind.
I'm not blind. You blind.
That is what I just said.
You just said what?
I did not say what. I said you.
That's what I'm asking you.
And you is answering.
Shut up. You.
Yes,
Not you, him. What's your name?
me.
Yes, you.
I am me. He's me. And I'm you.
And I'm
So it was clear from the start that the communication between these people was doomed because they were unfamiliar with their cultures. The Japanese use names such as you and me, which are not used in America or even in India. No one uses names like these, so he was not able to understand what he was trying to say. The thing which comes to his mind was like he was pointing out to him when he was saying you. So this caused some confusion, which led to some disturbed communication. So now you all might be thinking there are a number of cultures out there, and how are we supposed to be familiar with every one of them? Well, this seems to be a problem. But let me tell you, the author has already given a solution about this problem in the article. First of all, let me take another example and tell you about another thing. So you all know what a bridge is. Do you know there is a bridge that connects Saudi Arab and Bahrain so that you can travel by road? Just imagine how much things are easier for the people because they can travel through that bridge without any problem instead of buying plane tickets and any other mode of transport going there, traveling there. Similarly, in this way, there is a bridge which can connect people from different cultures together. So we call this bridge as the cultural bridge. Now, this bridge is not something made of beams or roads or something like this, but it acts as a road. Now, this bridge is actually a person who is familiar with the culture of the other party. In the form of unspoken signals. So for this, the author identifies 5 rules of thumb for negotiating in other cultures, which will be explained by my teammate. So over to you, Kavita.
Good morning, sir. Am I audible and visible?
Yes, please continue.
Okay. So, thank you, Arbaz. Moving forward, our first rule is adapt the way you express disagreement. So, in different countries, in some of the countries, it's appropriate to say that I disagree with you and tell to the another party that you are wrong. Some others, this is seen as a but in some other cultures, this is seen as the same behavior could provoke anger and possibly break down the relationship. The key is we can say explain it. Instead of this, I will take down your discussion. The key is to listen. The verbal cues are the keys to listen, especially whatever the linguistic experts call, those are upgraders and downgraders. Try to understand your upgraders and downgraders in your business context around you. Our second rule is know when to bottle it up or let it off. You should recognize that what exactly emotional expressiveness is. In some culture, it is appropriate. It's appropriate, but a German negotiator explained that a German word that is Sachlichkeit. In English, English its meaning is objectivity, which refers to the specifically separating opinion from the person expressing them. So after that, people from this kind of view or this kind of perspective, they always see emotional expressiveness as a lack of maturity or lack of professionalism. Like French people also, they are very emotional. As we discuss more, getting more emotional. So in our second point, we can say that you have to understand that where you have to put emotional outpouring, whether it is yours or theirs. In third point, learn how the other culture builds trust. During the negotiation, explicitly, both parties try to evaluate that whether it will benefit their business or not, and implicitly trying to assess that whether they can trust each other or not. So sometimes we have to think differently, or have to take different perspective, that is relationship perspective as well as business perspective. You won't get unless you think differently. Research in this area divide trust into two different fields: cognitive trust and affective trust. Cognitive trust are based on the confidence you feel in someone's accomplishment skills. It comes from your head. Whereas affective trust arises from feelings of emotional closeness, empathy, and it comes from your heart. Many of the surveys reveal that, especially in America, they draw a very, very sharp line between cognitive trust and affective trust. And whereas Chinese love to connect both of them. Our fourth rule is avoid yes or no questions. That one of the most confounding aspects of international negotiation is that in some cases, people use yes, but in reality it means no. And somewhere people use no as a frequent knee-jerk word, but it exactly means that let us discuss further. The misunderstanding of the signals led to the waste of time. As we see in the case study before, that what is the big impact of saying no? It is not just that about no. There are many more signals which affect your business, like tapping your nose, tapping your feet, shaking your hand, all have a different meaning in the business culture. When you want to know that about your counterpart, whether he is willing to do, or his answer to every question that leaves you more confused than before. Remember the fourth point: avoid yes or no question. And rather than saying that would you do this, you can ask how long would it take you to get this done. And after that, our next point is be careful about putting it in writing. A woman from Burundi, she is working for a Dutch company. She explains that in her culture, if a person is getting on a phone and come to a verbal agreement, it is enough for her. But if they get a phone and send a written agreement, written recap for the discussion, so they can written. So it clearly shows that they don't get trust over her. In these kind of business perspectives, these kind of business different approaches branches felt that they have felt that led to the difficulty in signing a contract. Many of the countries, especially America, they heavily rely on the written agreement, whereas some countries the relationship carry more weight than any legal agreement. In fifth point, we learned that we have to cautiously proceed while we doing contract, and in this emerging market, in this emerging market, everything is dynamic. We have to understand that nothing is permanent. Even your final deal is not final, 100% not final. Now, I would like to call Abbas for concluding.
Thank you so much, Kavita. Now that we have talked about the 5 thumb rules for cross-cultural management and negotiation, there are some other points to remember, from which one of them is already talked about by Kavita. So the first point is, remember, when negotiating in emerging markets, everything in these countries is dynamic and no deal is ever really 100% final. So always be ready with a backup plan. Also, while hiring the cultural bridges, make sure that they have sufficient knowledge about the other person's culture. Otherwise, this can also backfire. And finally, don't forget the universal rules. When you're negotiating a deal, you need to persuade and react to convince, pushing your points while working carefully towards an agreement. In the heat of the discussion, what is spoken is important, but the trust you have built and the subtle messages you have understood, your ability to adapt, will ultimately make the differences between success and failure. So that's it from our side. Hope you all enjoyed the presentation. Thank you.
Right. Thank you, Arbaz. Thank you, Kavita. And we will move to the next presentation first, and then we will come back and have a feedback round.
So is my screen visible?
Yes.
So shall I start?
Yeah.
As the saying goes, all work and no play make Jack a dull boy. It is a fact that without light-hearted talks and funny jokes, workplace could turn into the last place any person in the world would want to be at. How about squeezing some fun out of your work? A very good morning to all. I, Nadia Khan, along with my team member Rafia Ishrat, are going to present a very interesting topic called sarcasm, self-deprecation and inside joke, a user guide to humor at work. The author of this article is Brad Bitterly, who is a postdoctoral research fellow at the University of Michigan Ross School of Business, and Alison Woodbrook, who is the O'Brien Associate Professor of Business Administration at Harvard Business School. Firstly, I would like to give you an overview of this Harvard Business Review article, which states that humor is a common element of human interaction and therefore has an impact on work groups and organization. Despite this observation, managers often fail to take humor seriously or realize its numerous benefits. This article describes how managers enhance leadership, group cohesiveness, communication, creativity, and organizational culture. Much like selecting the proper tool from a toolkit, managers can select the appropriate humor style suitable for the desired organizational outcome. Moving on, the very first approach of humor in the workplace, which states how humor enhances or decreases the status. The successful use of humor can increase the status in both new and existing relationships, but failed humor attempts, for example, inappropriate jokes, can harm the status. The relationship between the successful use of humor and status is mediated by perception of confidence and competence, which in turn increases the joke teller status. Interestingly, it has been seen that telling both appropriate and inappropriate jokes, regardless of the outcome, signals the confidence of the joke teller. Although Telling inappropriate jokes signals low competence, and the combined effect of high confidence and low competence harms the status of the joke teller. Rather than conceptualizing humor as an ancillary behavior, humor plays a fundamental role in shaping interpersonal perception and hierarchies within groups. Now, I would like to give you an example of a TV series, The Office, which some of you must be familiar with. It is one of the most classic American sitcom television series based on a group of office employees that goes through some funny misfortune at the Pennsylvania branch of Dunder Mifflin Paper Company on a daily basis. The main character of this fantastic series is named Michael Scott, being portrayed by Steve Carell, making his role a memorable one. The character sketch of Michael is described as a dramatic person with a sense of one-liners and improper jokes, and the Scott's audacity to create a sense of leadership and friendship between him and his staff. Now the question arises, why humor is so powerful? In collaboration with Callum Warren and McGraw, it has developed and tested a general theory of humor called the benign violation. The answer of this question lies in this theory itself. It proposes that humor occurs only when three conditions are satisfied. The very first, when the situation is a violation. The second, when the situation is benign. And third, when benign and violation occurs simultaneously. According to this theory, a violation refers to anything that threatens one's belief about how the world should be. That is, something seems threatening, unsettling, or wrong. A strength of this theory is that it also explains when things are not funny. A situation can fail to be funny because it depicts a violation that does not simultaneously seem benign, or because it depicts a benign situation that has no violation. For example, play fighting and tickling ceases to elicit laughter either when the attack stops or becomes too aggressive, that is, malign violation. According to an evolutionary perspective, humorous violation likely originated as threats to psychological well-being as well. For example, insults, sarcasm, including behaviors that break social norms, cultural norms, and moral norms. For example, when people make a racist or sexist jokes, which violates our sense of how the world works. So yes, science agrees. If you think racist or sexist jokes are funny, the reason is that you don't care about the feelings of the people the joke is about. Now moving on further, let's talk about the context of humor in the workplace. When we converse with others, we need to balance multiple motives simultaneously. We may aim to exchange information clearly and accurately, make a positive impression on one another, navigate conflict, and have fun. The degree to which each motive is viewed as normative and socially acceptable varies from group to group. That's why context is so important when it comes to humor. It's probably safer to tell you a funny story about the horrible airline experience you have experienced abroad at a dinner party with your friends where the motive is enjoyment than to a border patrol agent as you are re-entering the country where the motive is information exchange. A joke may work dazzlingly well with one group of people but completely flop with another. Now let's see when humor works and when it doesn't. When to use inside jokes. Workplace humor is typically not scripted jokes but rather emerges in everyday conversation and often takes the form of inside jokes. For example, a secret nickname for a boss. This emergent humor often has specialized meaning for those who both use and laugh at the joke. In this way, humor at work is a basis for bonding with others in the work group while at the same time keeping the outsider at a distance. Humor sets boundaries, establishing who is in and who is out, what is acceptable and what is not. And perhaps most important, how we make sense of something new or challenging. The more cohesive the bond, the more prominent the role humor has in maintaining each member's identity and retaining the cohesion of the group. Another example I would like to add from the Office series, where the two main characters, named Michael and Dwight were pretending to laugh along to an inside joke made by Jim's new boss Josh is a prime example. Michael's comment, "I love inside jokes. I would love to be a part of one someday." It creates a kind of uncomfortable silence that the office excels. Well, this is also an inside joke that only regular viewers would understand. Now let's see how sarcasm used. Surprisingly, studies have shown that being sarcastic, this may be because saying one thing when you mean the opposite involves high level of thinking and creates the level of discourse, but the risk of being misunderstood or causing offense are high. The lesson given by Bitterly and Brooks says, tone it down with the new colleagues in unfamiliar setting or when working in teams where strong relationships have yet been built. Until you haven't established trust, it's best to communicate with respect. Now comes the self-deprecating humor. Self-deprecating humor is engaging in funny talks with friends or publicly about things you don't like in you. It could be about your appearance, behavior, habits, etc. For a self-deprecating joke to work, it must be genuine and not fabricated. Some level of exaggeration is, however, okay. A new study finds that leaders who strike the right balance, laughing at themselves but not their colleagues or underlings, may be seen as more likable, trustworthy, and caring. Strange as it may sound, many of us are happiest when we can laugh at a past misfortune and turn them into amusement for others. Leaders who focus on the well-being of others are more likely to earn the trust and goodwill of the employees. Poking fun at themselves may be one way in which leaders can de-emphasize differences in status between themselves and the employees, providing evidence for their concern for others. The researchers caution us that too much self-deprecating humor may backfire, coming across as insincere or fake. However, we should avoid making jokes about our core competencies. Knowing when and how to use it can make all the difference. For instance, when we go for a job interview, it's better to avoid making jokes about our weaknesses, about our strength, about our skill set in an area. Now, moving on further, I would like to call upon my team member Afia for the further proceedings.
Thank you, Nadia. Good morning, everyone. Moving to the next slide, humor to do difficult questions. Acknowledge the question without answering it. Ignore the question completely. Question the question. Attack the question. Give the incomplete answer. Defer to the will of others. State or imply the question has already been answered. Humor and feedback. Humor is a double-edged sword, and so using it properly can be of great help to individual. For instance, if we give someone negative feedback with some spice of humor in it, will have a lasting impact of the memories of a person. Moreover, the person also does take such feedback in a light manner. Humor as tool to cope with negative feeling. There are a number of coping strategies to deal with negative emotion. These include do not flow things out of proportion by going over them time and again in your mind. Try to reasonable. Accept that bad feelings are occasionally unavoided and think of why to make yourself feel better. Relax. Use pleasant activities like reading, walking, and talking with friends. Learn. Notice how grief, loss, and anger make you feel and which events trigger those feelings so you can prepare in advance. Exercise. Aerobic activities lowers your level of stress chemicals and allow you to cope better with negative emotion. Let's go for the past. Constantly going over negative events robs you of the present and make you feel bad. You do not need to be a comedian. The, work, the workplace colleges do not accept you to be professional comedians. Examples: witty conversation. Before you can be witty, you need to improve your conversation intelligence. No matter how witty you are, launching into a conversation with a humor, a story, or a joke can come across as overburdening. Storytelling describe the social and cultural activities of sharing stories, sometimes with with improvisation, theoretical, and embellishment. Every culture has its own story and narrative, which are shared as a means of entertainment, education, cultural preservation, or instilling moral value. Energetic presentation. Presenter. Before you do any design work of your presentation, start by asking yourself this question: what result is this audience looking for? Looking for from this presentation? Why exactly is this speech being given? If it were delivered flawlessly, what will the audience walk away with? By the way, the answer to the question is everything I know about the subject. Dig a little deeper before starting to write your speech. Humor at work. Humor creates an atmosphere of levity and a sense of perspective that can dissolve tension and in turn protect us from stress at work and even benefit our health. Moreover, researchers suggest that people who engage in more conversation, humor with colleagues feel happier and have higher job satisfaction. Laughter serves to create and strength social bond in humor as well as in claim ancestors. One evolutionary theory claimed that laughter first emerged in their ancestors as a response to signal safety and relief to others. After some time, unexpected occurs. This has implicated in modern time, and it may explain why collegians who laugh more together tend to enjoy and more safe or comfortable environment and a great sense chosen among team. Thank you so much.
Thank you all for being a patient listener.
Right. Thank you, Nadia. Thank you, Rafia. And so now let us have a round of feedback, and let us start from the presenters themselves. So, what do you think? Let us start from Arbaz. What do you think about your own performance and overall presentation? You may unmute yourself, Arbaz.
Yes. So we tried our best to gain the attentions of the audience. And the main reason to include that video was people, like you once said while showing us the presentation of Steve Jobs, you said people mostly remember the things that we show them instead of the text that is written in the presentation. So we thought that that video would help us gain their attention, and that video in itself was able to show that how can culture form barriers to communication, and this leads to ineffective negotiations and all. And at first there was some lack of coordination between us team partners, because there was some connectivity issues from Kavita's side, but I think everything went smoothly after that.
All right. Okay. So, what do you think are the areas in which you could have done better?
Sir, expressions, facial expressions.
Right. So what about Kavita? What do you think?
I feel nervous today so much.
Why were you nervous?
Actually, I don't know, sir.
Any feedback for Kavita and Arbaz? Maybe other presenters who have presented before may share their feedback on the performance. So anyone just explain what their presentation was about? Do they remember it?
So, how communication has an impact on workplaces? Sorry, I mean culture.
So overall, I found that the presentation was good, and Arbaz, you started very well. However, maybe in between, you try to bring back the attention with the help of a video and all. Maybe in the starting, if you can say start with an attention getter, like some more punch, maybe it would have been better. But overall, I found that your part you had good command over language, and one thing I noticed that you could avoid saying that moving on to the next slide. Okay, so it is not required when you are in a free flow presentation. So it looks a bit odd that moving on to the next slide, because it is not that the slides which are governing your presentation. Okay, so slides are just there to aid you, to provide as an aid. Okay. Sometimes I found that I think that example of there was too much text. It was not required to, you have to, like you could reduce the text and just use the pointers instead, even if there's a long example, the Indonesia and the Danish example. So it was not required to put that everything verbatim. So you can use just the pointers to explain the example. And you had the good analogies were used, like for example, really like the example of bridge, which you gave, and how I think these are things which people remember when you summarize things for them, make it easy for them, like the bridge example between Bahrain and Saudi Arabia, and the bridges between cultures, and that is how we could understand that there are certain things which are common among the cultures and which can help us understand the communication of different cultures. So, and also the video, it was good. In the case of Kavita, yes, I found that you were too nervous. In fact, I didn't find any problem with your command over language or overall. I found that, however, you was taking too much pressure, I think, and it was not required. And this is, I think, as an MBA student, overall, these presentations should become a habit for you. So try not to take pressure of these things. But yes, try to like better your performance every time. That is a good strategy to do it. But do not take too much pressure, otherwise it spoils everything. So it was looking like maybe for your help you can use. I have many times repeated this, that you could use cue cards. Okay. Once you're preparing, say for example, to remember the main point. So you were repeating words and you were trying to remember by repeating words and repeating sentences. So I think you could avoid that by, if you have a cue card that of central messages. So even if you're holding the cue cards, so you can, whether it's an online presentation or it's a face-to-face presentation, you can use those cue cards. That can go. So little bit of more preparation would have, I think, calmed you, and had added to your confidence. That's what I feel. So next time when you are asked to give presentation, so do a little bit of practice, and I think that can calm your nerves down. Okay, let us move to the next two presenters, Nadia and Rafia. Nadia, what do you think?
So after the presentation, I realized that I could have used the hand gestures while presenting, and I was not able to see myself, so I don't know how my expressions were coming across. So yes, rest I'm open to feedback from your side.
So any suggestions for Nadia? From anyone? So what about Rafia? What do you think, Rafia?
I'm sorry, sir. And conversation.
What?
Lack of conversation.
Okay. So any suggestions?
Pronunciation.
Any suggestions for Rafia? Anyone who would like to add something and give some feedback to both of them? Okay. So there is a comment by Kamran. Tip from a master presenter, David J.P. Phillips. 1 hour before presentation, watch some stand-up comedy. Right? I think that it's a very nice suggestion. If we can do that, it can calm the nerves down and give you a lot of confidence. Maybe you can try it. And Zubair is like giving one suggestion for Rafia. Maybe work on pronunciation of some words. You can note it down. Okay, so let us come to Nadia first. And I found that Nadia was quite confident, and there was no issue with the language. I think she had good command over language. And however, in the initial phase, I found that I could sense, I don't know whether you were reading from somewhere, some text which was below your screen. So it looked, your eye contact was not towards the camera. It was somewhere like, it looked like that you were looking down. So I don't know whether I'm right or wrong, but that's what I felt in the initial phase of your presentation. So maybe you had some notes there or some.
I have prepared the cue cards for.
Yeah. So, but cue cards are not there for reading, Nadia. Okay. So when you are using cue cards, you just have to refer to them, and that's why I always give this advice that if you have any main point or if you have any central message to give, maybe use a different color in the cue card. So even if you just refer to it, glance it over, you will remember that point. Okay, and it will feel more natural. So your eye contact with the audience will not break. That's one. In your slides also, you try to create it. You try to create the slides very well, and in fact, I found the design and everything was good. However, I also felt in between sometimes you also used a lot of text, which was not required. I think it was copied from the article as it is. So you could have avoided those things. Like for example, when you were explaining even the theory, the benign violation theory. So maybe just the diagram, the right hand side diagram would have been better. That's only the diagram. So the text you could have avoided, and you could have just explained the text yourself. And you were doing it. You were explaining the text. So you could avoid that too much text and just focus. Maybe a diagram can really basically buttress your point. That will be a good strategy. In your case, I think overall it was very good, Nadia, but just maybe you can use a bit more pauses. Sometimes you can pause a bit and then like recollect, and so it basically breaks the monotone. Okay, and then it's more like a wave. So you use pause and you put more emphasis. When you pause, sometimes you put more emphasis and you give time for reflection to the people. So that you can use. You can like in some next presentation of yours. When it comes to Rafia, I felt that you require some bit of practice, and especially you have to work on your language skills. And at this level, I think we can all advise you to step up and start working, because at this stage it's very difficult at the level of the class to correct these things. But you need to step up your game. That's what I can say. That work on your language skills, and some pronunciation. I don't mind any kind of accent. I don't have any issue with any kind of accent, even if people have, because in India, not just in India, in the entire world, there are all different kinds of dialects are there. Okay, and even in UP where we live, you just travel say 40-50 kilometers in any direction, the dialects change. Okay, and with dialects, when dialects change, some accent also comes, different kind of accents. So people coming from South India may have different accent, from East India may have different accent. Okay, Northeast different accent. So the accent is not a problem. Yes. Okay. So if you can work on it, then it's completely fine. But I don't mind accent, because world over there will be some different accent. But yes, if you have an issue with pronunciation, so try to work on that part. Try to work on that part, and you at this level will be the best judge of yourself. That where do you need improvement in terms of language? Are you at par with others, or are you doing your best when it comes to improving your language skills? So we can only guide you to an extent in that, provide you some hints that this is what you all can do. There are the plethora of resources. The only thing which you need is a little bit of sincerity on that account. Okay, and regular practice, regular work. So I have seen examples of people, and these are real examples. I think we have shared it a couple of times, that people coming from Hindi medium, people coming from Urdu medium, and who have done their even graduation, and many a times their high school and even 12th or inter, we used to call PUC at that time, pre-university, all this in Hindi medium. And then they went on to become the professors in English, then want to become great orators in English. So English is a very easy language compared to other languages. Okay, so mastering English is very, very easy. And today the whole world is trying to basically conspire to make us better in English, I would say. So because everything is in English, so it becomes very easy to adapt this language if you have just a little bit of sincerity towards that goal. Okay, so try to work on these things. Maybe you will improve a lot. Okay, maybe you can take some help from your friends, and you can take suggestions from others. So overall, this was both the presentations were fine. And let us come to the content of this article. These two articles. In fact, the first article talks about the difference in cross-cultural communication, and we have discussed cross-cultural communication is a very important subject, because majority of you, all of you, will be working in a multicultural environment. Even if you are working in an Indian company, the chances are you will be interacting with clients who are abroad in different cultures. You might be interacting with co-workers who are sitting somewhere in different part of in and comes from a different culture. Okay,